Thank you. H.P. Blavatsky, HPB, claimed it is easy to be a Theosophist. Just to remind you what she wrote. Any person of average intellectual capacities and a leaning towards the metaphysical, of pure, unselfish life, who finds more joy in helping his neighbour than in receiving help himself, one who is ever ready to sacrifice his own pleasures for the sake of other people, and who loves truth, goodness and wisdom for their own sake, not for the benefit they may confer, is a Theosophist. Ooh, it doesn't sound easy to me, goodness. But maybe if we look at some of the statements made in the teachings and take them to heart, they will help us to be a Theosophist on principle. We are told in the Secret Doctrine about, you all know this, the fundamental unity of all existence. Existence is one thing. There is one being. This being is an omnipresent, eternal, boundless and immutable principle. There are two experiences of mine which come to mind, which gave me a tiny inkling of the vastness of these ideas. The first was a visit years ago to the planetarium at Baker Street in London, where I looked up at the wonderful expanse of outer space. This was repeated for real, as it were, on a clear night in Yosemite National Park, where there were no electric lights to spoil the jaw-dropping wonder of myriads of stars. The other experience was my very first sight of the Grand Canyon. Nothing, no film or photograph had prepared me for that moment. What I can still remember about those moments, or these moments, is the feeling of being part of it, as though something in me rushed outwards as through some umbilical cord. I had to add here that my sister lives in America, so I've had these wonderful experiences. They're very good to us. Peruka quotes HPB as saying, "Thinking toward the unthinkable is a wonderful spiritualizing force. We are taught," he says, "that there exists in man a link with the unutterable." I love that, the unutterable. A cord, a communication that extends from it to the inner consciousness. Becoming one with that link, we can transcend the powers of ordinary human intellect. Those experiences of mine were a glimpse of another secret doctrine proposition. The fundamental identity of all souls and the universal oversoul, the latter being itself an aspect of the unknown root. We are told that the divine reality is transcendent. It cannot even be speculated on because it is beyond our conception. At the same time, it is immanent in every particle of the world. So the transcendent reality is indefinable, but everywhere present. It is hidden, but not apart from the world. Some poetry from Walt Whitman describes this well. These words are from Passage to India and were used by Vaughan Williams in his Sea Symphony. O vast rondure, swimming in space, covered all over with visible power and beauty, alternate light and day and the teeming spiritual darkness, unspeakable high processions of sun and moon and countless stars above, below the manifold grass and waters, animals, mountains, trees, with inscrutable purpose, some hidden prophetic intention. Now first, it seems, my thought begins to span thee. The first time I sang the Sea Symphony years and years and years and years ago, I thought, oh, I don't really like things about the sea. The next time I sang it, I was in tears most of the time. It's so beautiful. HPB wrote that the ultimate reality thrills through every atom and infinitesimal point, I can't say that, of the whole cosmos. Cosmos with a K, the whole cosmos. Try saying that to yourself when you're looking at a breathtakingly beautiful view or a tiny gem of a flower hidden amongst the undergrowth. I think you would feel a thrill right through you. I wonder what would happen if we tried it out on a litter-strewn inner city street, or a patch of Japanese knotweed, Himalayan balsam, or hogweed it is now. The so-called weeds. The unutterable does not discriminate. The thrill is still there. Everything in the universe, throughout all its kingdoms, is conscious. That is, endowed with a consciousness of its own kind and on its own plane of perception. HPB wrote that every atom in the universe has the potentiality of self-consciousness in it and is a universe in itself and for itself. It is an atom and an angel, she wrote. Within the unity lies all potentialities. There is potential for all the atoms and particles which are needed to build a universe, all of the same essence. Once these potentialities become actualities, we have differentiation, diversity. And one phrase that we hear a lot is, there is unity in diversity. This is the basis for true brotherhood. American Emily Sellon wrote in her book The Pilgrim and the Pilgrimage that we, that is all of us, which will always, we are not the 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, but 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, which will always amount to 1. And think how many times we've been in incarnation. So, however many human beings there are, we are still all part of the one. Ernest Wood, an early Theosophist, wrote a lovely description of brotherhood. It is a great movement of humanity, broadside forward, like waves coming up upon a beach. It is not a processional affair, like a string of caterpillars following one another head to tail. As the tips of the fingers of a hand move in relation to one another, because all the fingers spring from the hand, so the activities of man show they are rooted in one life. They are not happy in complete separation. But just as the fingers each make an individual contribution to the work of the hand, so each human being has something to offer which no one else can give as well. You can take that as well in two ways. Every act anywhere affects to some extent everyone and everything in all realms of life. Acts of goodness and acts of exploitation. You won't all know this lady, but I can remember Rosemary Labalestiere saying that surely we are not expected to like everybody, but we have to learn to love them all. I once had a strange experience when standing at a long rush hour bus queue. There was a mix of gender, age and background. All of a sudden, I felt a rush of love for all around me. It was that umbilical cord again. It lasted for quite a while, and on the bus it took me all my time to refrain from physical contact with people. But it was a wonderful lesson. A few years ago I was on jury service, and the case I was on involved a young man accused of being involved in the importation of 3 million illegal cigarettes. He was a real wheeler dealer, but along with one other juror, I saw a certain naivety. He was clever enough to set up small companies importing from China, so household goods and things like that, setting up bargain stores and a tyre company. But everything he touched eventually failed, leaving a trail of debts. Now I couldn't see anything in the evidence to say he was guilty, definitely, for sure. But eventually someone pointed something out that, right, yes, he's guilty. So when we eventually found him guilty, apart from one person, I said to one of the jurors, and he'd been adamant from the start with no reference to any evidence, he's guilty, right? But I said to him that I still felt sorry for him. I feel sorry for all sorts of people who are in trouble. I was struggling to explain in simple terms what I meant. But this man astonished me by saying, "You mean you feel sorry for him as a human being?" Yes, I said. And inside, privately, I said, because he is a fellow pilgrim who has naively gone astray so easily. So it's these little experiences in life where, it helps you, and it sometimes maybe helps other people as well. Surendra Narayan, a past international vice president of the Theosophical Society, wrote that over a period of time, as one goes on performing one's duty willingly to family, friends, neighbours, and so forth, one grows more sensitive to the needs and suffering of others, and begins to feel within oneself that the mere performance of duty is not enough. And so one slowly moves on into a deeper and purer sphere of responsibility, which carries with it a sense of inner concern for the other person. There is also an element of closeness and love. There is no feeling of compulsion or pressure of social norms. The urge comes from within. And the perception of brotherliness slowly expands in wider and wider circles of mankind and all other life, for all life seeks to be bound together with a thread of gold. This is well described in one of my favourite pieces of poetry, which I've used before, in Alexander Pope's An Essay on Man, which is a very, very long poem. God loves from whole to parts, but human soul must rise from individual to the whole. Self-love but serves the virtuous mind to wake, as the small pebble stirs the peaceful lake. The centre moved, and a circle straight succeeds, another still, and still another spreads. Friend, parent, neighbour, first it will embrace, his country next, and next all human race. Wide and more wide the o'erflowings of the mind take every creature in of every kind. And I would add obviously the plant kingdom and the mineral kingdom, but that's beautiful, written so long ago. In Mabel Collins' book, Idyll of the White Lotus, it states, "The principle which gives life dwells in us and without us, and it's undying and eternally beneficent. Tut, yes, right page. Tut tvam ossi, thou art that. Divinity dwells at the very core of our being, so we can go there whenever we want. It is at that centre that we can feel at one with everyone, beyond all differences. It was felt important enough for that ideal to be our society's first object, and humanity has barely taken the first step in breaking down all the barriers." The book also states, "Each man is," this was mentioned the other day, "each man is his own absolute lawgiver, the dispenser of glory or gloom to himself. I'm here borrowing some words from Geoffrey Farthing, written in 1972. Theosophy not only gives us knowledge of the workings of the universe, it gives us knowledge of our own workings. It is in this light that we are able to take charge of ourselves and, in accordance with the law, our own destinies. This alters man's stature. Not only does it say that no one else can atone for his sins, it says that whereas now he might be enjoying or suffering the effects of past causes which he has generated, he has it within his power by right action to make his future not only more pleasant, but more significant and effective in terms of his long-term development over many lives. And in redeeming himself, to that degree he redeems the whole of humankind. The future is in each of our hands now. So that tells us straight. All our circumstances are opportunities to plant seeds for future accomplishments. It is hard to think, what can I learn from this situation? Why did this happen to me is a much more likely reaction in difficult circumstances. But as we grow in awareness, living to serve humanity will be, to borrow a phrase, and I don't know who started it, at first a core, then a habit, and at last a joyful necessity. Again from Mabel Collins. The soul of man is immortal, and its future is the future of a thing whose growth and splendour has no limit. Jinrasa suggested that this statement must be discovered as a truth by each person. But if people live rightly, according to such truths as Theosophy offers them, then long before they come to the end of life, they can have the uttermost certainty that they are immortal. Immortality is not a static process, but a continual growth. There is also the gradual realization of the hidden beauty and immortality in others. And it is our supreme duty to see that no action of ours, as individuals or as a group, puts a barrier in the way of the individual's unfolding. It would be wrapping up a tiny rosebud so tightly that it cannot grow larger or ever become a rose. Radha Bernier wrote that life is a continual alchemical process. All the experiences in life have the potential of facilitating a transmutation of consciousness. At the physical level, invisible forces are forever converting forms and substances in mysterious ways. For the most part, we are unaware of these dynamic changes. It's like Tim mentioned about when we die, there's life inside us that carry on for a while. It's all these little beings that are helping us inside our bodies. As an example, Radha gives the process of a frog's egg, a tadpole and a frog, the transformation of a cat. Is it still on? The realization that living is an alchemical process at both the physical and the subtler levels makes all the difference to how we live our lives. Just as every day the material taken from the soil by the plant is transmuted into life-giving sap, even ordinary experiences are transmuted into soul-enlarging wisdom when there is a real attention to the present. Awareness is a process of constant renewal. To go on further? Yes. In the third fundamental proposition, there is an obligatory pilgrimage for every soul through the cycle of incarnation. In a sense, it is liberating to know that the journey is, as it were, compulsory. I personally feel a sense of security, as though somehow I'm being guided and cared for, albeit most of the time I probably do not pick up on any guidance through lack of intuition. But it's also daunting. There's such a long way to go. And it reminds me of one of my favourite quotes from the playwright Tom Stoppard. Eternity is a terrible thought. I mean, when's it going to end? Then will I have the courage to leave the winding path and climb the rock face? I haven't got a head for heights, for starters, and how many ladders will help me up, and how many snakes will I tumble down? But our pilgrimage is one of transformation. It becomes obvious that humanity has a great responsibility in the evolutionary scheme. Little do the vast majority know of the duty we have to help those who follow in all the kingdoms, and little do they know of or appreciate the help and guidance given us by invisible beings. If we tune into the mineral, vegetable and animal kingdoms, we will come in contact with their work. And amazingly, we have all been in those kingdoms at some time. So there must be some residue of experience in our memories. It seems that we lose conscious touch with the angels for long ages, but the contact is never lost, and it will eventually become more real. It is up to us to consciously approach them. It is said that the veil between the visible and the invisible aspects of nature is gradually growing thinner. Now we are on our way home, we must learn to cooperate with angels. And I'm sure that they would like something a bit more exciting than finding us parking places. I think that's gone out now, but people were always saying, oh, they find me, parking bit. But I found it's amazing how often I say, oh, I can't remember who wrote that book, or oh, I wonder, oh, I can't, oh. And that day or the next day, it will be on the television, it'll be in something I read. It's really as fast as that. It's amazing. It's wonderful. You try it out. It works. A lady called William A. Pym in America wrote it, that the American journal is called The Quest, and she wrote in there in 2000. She said that in this changing world we seem to have forgotten how to link ourselves with a greater, more potent force. Maybe we need to develop a modern day set of spiritual practices. I think that is going on to some extent. That will restore this link. We will never know if we don't try. If we send positive energy freely for the good of humanity as a whole, it will be accepted and used. I think that's come up this week. By taking the great teachers of humanity into our daily thoughts and once more acknowledging them as the vital force in the life scheme, we can remember that this society exists to carry on their work. HPB, quoting from a letter from a master, said, "Theosophy must be made practical. It has to find objective expression in an all-embracing code of life, thoroughly impregnated with its spirit, the spirit of mutual tolerance, charity and love." Theosophy must be made practical. We're hearing that phrase a lot at present, but surely the only way that can be done is by the individual making it practical. Alongside the basic tenets, we have more than enough manuals from all the different systems and traditions. As spiritual tourists, it is easy to go from resort to resort, trying to find someone who will give it to us on a plate. I'm not saying so much maybe in the Theosophical Society, but I know lots of groups where people go along to all these different groups and they want something instant. Perhaps it is time to forget the package holidays and plan our own itineraries. Often it is said that there are 3 aspects to being a Theosophist: study, meditation and service. Study provides us with concepts for an understanding of life and its purpose. Whatever we learn by study, and we have to discriminate so that we can discern what we should study, has to be absorbed and applied. Whatever meditation practice we choose to follow, the basic purpose is to change our centre of awareness. It is a method of applying what we have learned in our study to ourselves and our life. Service, according to William A. Pym, I wish I knew something about that lady, probably receives the least attention. Yet if life is truly one, what happens to us, each of us, is happening to all of us, and involvement is essential. Every day presents us with chances to help someone or something, no matter how small the act of service may seem. Conrad Jameson wrote, "To bring about a change in our world means we must also change. By the use of will, change can be initiated, and through thought it can then be brought into action. The constant monitoring of our thoughts, feelings, and motives leads us to that freedom which makes us directors of our destiny. Our teachings tell us we are immortal and indestructible, so let us go forward without fear of the unknown." Just another quote from Ravi Ravindra in the Theosophist of May 1998. He wrote that daily life is a practice, and if a person cannot actually practice the spiritual life in the marketplace, one cannot practice it at all. We are all so occupied with the little struggles in life that we forget why we are here. A spiritual life is one in which we intuit, even dimly, that there is a purpose for our existence. We must fulfill our responsibility. Ravi suggests that many want to be transformed without the bother of being changed. The search for the sacred, or making one's ordinary life into a spiritual practice, does not require anything very fancy, he says. It does not require any particular posture or standing on one's head, though you can do. Eating cream cheese, or whatever, you can do. It really requires an impartial self-observation from moment to moment. This can begin with anything such as one's own gestures, posture, tone of voice, how one is with a child, the cat, or a plant. We are even like a hologram. We're each like a hologram. Every part of us contains our whole history, so we can begin anywhere. We have inherited, the system of Raj Yoga, which guides us in acquiring certain qualities and working on our weaknesses. But I thought I would mention a couple of modern ideas which I find inspiring. Firstly, some points on giving and receiving. What might be the ultimate act of giving and receiving? Probably the ongoing emanation of the one and the experience it receives in return. What better reason to live the life? The one being on manifestation has two aspects, spirit and matter. Spirit would not manifest as individual consciousness without matter. It needs a vehicle. Without spirit, matter would remain an empty abstraction. As a human being in our incarnation, our body is part of what we are. I don't go in for I am not my body. My body isn't all of me, but it's part of what I am in this incarnation. There is a phrase, the more you give, the more you will receive. Of course, the intention and motive is important. It should be unconditional. It is said that anything of value increases when it is given. It reminds me of a story of the magic porridge pot. No matter how much is given away, the pot is still full. Composer Michael Tippett wrote about spiritual treasure. The more we give away, the more is left behind. And if any merely matter-of-fact person got as far as the treasure house, they would be quite certain that there was nothing of value in it, just because it was not locked up. Deepak Chopra gives us 3 steps for putting the law of giving into effect. Firstly, he said, wherever I go and whoever I encounter, I will bring them a gift. The gift may be a compliment, a flower, or a prayer. Oh, there's lots of other things. Today, I will give something to everyone I come into contact with, he says. And so I will begin the process of circulating joy, wealth and affluence in my life and in the lives of others. Secondly, today I will gratefully receive all the gifts that life has to offer me. I think this is hard to receive from others, especially when someone gives you a gift and you think, no, they can't afford it. I've been bad at that. I will receive all the gifts of nature, sunlight and the sound of birds singing, or spring showers, or the first snow of winter. I will also be open to receiving from others, whether it be in the form of a material gift, money, a compliment, or a prayer. Thirdly, I will make a commitment to keep wealth circulating in my life. It doesn't necessarily mean money. Circulating in my life by giving and receiving life's most precious gifts, the gifts of caring, affection, appreciation, and love. Each time I meet someone, I will silently wish them happiness, joy, and laughter. That last idea of silently wishing someone happiness and joy is the same idea as the blessing that Pierre Pradavant has written about. He says, blessing is wishing from the bottom of your heart, in total sincerity, the very best for that person. I would say that this is acknowledging that we do not always necessarily know what is best for ourselves, never mind for anyone else. Blessing is much more an attitude of deep reverence than words, and it could take the form of a hug, a certain tone of voice, or a glance. It can be as natural as breathing. Pierre says that either spirituality is integrated into the most humdrum, this is the same message again, into the most humdrum or normal daily activity, or it is not even worth mentioning. Each of us, by the quality of our thoughts, can become an agent of transformation in the world. HBB told us that we, as the present guardians, must continue to set the example of speaking and living in the principles of the ancient wisdom. George Bernard Shaw wrote that this is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose, the being a force of nature, instead of a feverish little clod of ailments and grievances. It was a good friend of Annie Besant's, wasn't it? In doing more than just paying lip service to the theosophical principles, they will become a power in our life. So let us be Theosophists on principle as we live our daily lives. Thank you.